America's national parks include some of the most dangerous places on Earth. Extreme heat, sudden floods, freezing cold, and thin air have caused many deaths, sometimes only minutes from marked trails or shelter. These are places people trust, yet nature still decides what happens. And this danger does not only threaten lives today, it has shaped human history inside these parks, and in some cases, it forced entire communities to leave. At Mesa Verde National Park in Colorado, people built stone cities into cliffs more than 700 years ago and lived there for generations. Then, without a clear answer, they abandoned them. In Utah, at Arches National Park, where temperature shifts fracture rock from within, causing massive stone arches to collapse without warning, some disappearing in seconds. And in Oregon, Crater Lake exists because a volcano collapsed inward during a massive eruption, leaving behind the hollow of a mountain that no longer exists. Stay with me as we uncover America's national parks in a way few people ever do, where danger, history, and mystery collide, and where what happened before may change how you see these places forever. Bryce Canyon National Park looks like someone froze a fiery ocean mid-wave, every hoodoo shaped by wind, rain and ice. The ground here wears hundreds of colours, each stripe a memory of when the world looked completely different. Over time, some of the rock towers collapse overnight, while new ones begin to form under the same sky. Because of this constant shift, the spires change shape faster than you'd expect, like slow-motion sculptures always at work. Stories passed down through generations say the Hoodoos were once living faces turned to stone after doing wrong things. During the night, people claim the rocks hum quietly, as if the wind is trying to talk through stone mouths. When it rains, the sound bounces around the amphitheatres like thunder trapped in a bowl. Up here, the air feels thinner, but every breath carries the chill of a place that still changes even while standing still. And then, just beyond those red towers, something moves swiftly and silently. Pronghorn antelopes begin their run across the open ground. At first glance, they aren't just fast, they're built like running machines, with bones, lungs and hearts tuned only for speed. Even without real danger nearby, nothing chasing them today can catch them, but they still run as if unseen predators are right behind. Part of this instinct comes from their design. Their eyes have an exceptionally wide field of vision, allowing them to spot danger long before it comes close. Their bodies help them survive the extremes here. Their fur works like outdoor gear, trapping air so they stay warm in cold and cool in heat. And when the herd moves, it's almost silent, just soft thuds as hundreds change direction together. In this harsh terrain, they barely drink water and draw moisture from plants that most animals ignore. For the youngest, survival begins immediately. Mothers hide newborns so well that even hungry coyotes can walk past without seeing them. Within hours, each baby can run, because in their world, standing still means being gone. And perhaps the most surprising trait of all, they shed their horns every year, yet grow them back sharper and stronger. Eventually, as they vanish into the horizon, the ground starts to rise again, toward the strange shapes of the rock formations. Each tower looks like it was built by accident, yet they all follow the same quiet rule of wind, rain, crack, repeat. The rocks peel away in layers so thin you could almost mistake them for stacked paper. Some formations evolve differently. Specific pillars wear flat tops like helmets, balancing tons of stone that shouldn't still be standing. When storms sweep across the canyon, lightning hits and leaves black scars that stay for years, marking which ones have survived the strike. As seasons shift, the cliffs grow new holes and windows, as if the stone keeps changing its own design. Locals tell their own version of this change. When fog rolls through, the shapes seem to move, like the canyon is breathing in slow motion. Meanwhile, scientists uncover another layer of the story. Minerals found here form only under pressure, meaning these soft towers were once hard rock buried far below. Night after night, each time water freezes, it slices the stone open a little more, like ice carving glass. And somewhere between those crumbling towers, small holes open in the ground, homes of the prairie dogs. Despite their name, they are actually squirrel cousins, known for constant chatter and complex social bonds, including grooming and greeting each other by touching teeth. Each hole is part of a huge underground city with neighbourhoods for sleeping, raising pups and escaping predators, all connected into a larger colony maze. Their tunnels are so precisely dug that air circulates naturally, and the soil they turn over enriches the land, allowing new plants to grow. Alarm calls act as a detailed communication system, describing the type and speed of approaching predators, while sentries and sealed entrances keep the colony safe. Hawks, snakes, foxes and coyotes hunt daily, but teamwork and vigilance help the prairie dogs survive, and babies emerge above ground only when ready to evade danger. Beneath Bryce Canyon's silent stone towers, their busy underground cities quietly shape the land and prove that life flourishes both above and below the surface. Grand Canyon National Park is a giant cut in the ground, where rock walls drop around a twisting river far below. From the rim you can see stacked rock layers in different colours, each from a different time in Earth's story, with the oldest rocks at the bottom so worn and hard they appear almost melted and then frozen again. In certain spots, the oldest rocks at the bottom are so worn and hard that they look almost melted and then frozen again. Moving from top to bottom, you can walk through several climate zones, like going from a forest hike to a desert hike on one long trail. Along the way, some ledges hold old ruins and rock art, proof that people lived, farmed and travelled here long before it became a park. In a few hidden corners, waterfalls pour straight off the cliffs into pools that stay cool and clear even when the main river turns muddy. The canyon continues to change, as rockfalls still happen, creating new ledges, caves and fresh scars on the walls without warning. From above, it looks like a giant tree root system, burned into the plateaus, with the main river as the trunk and side canyons as the branches. And within the sun-baked rocks and ledges, thick-bodied Cholla lizards find the perfect places to hide and soak up the heat. When danger appears, they dash into a crack and wedge themselves tight, their tough, rough skin acting as built-in armour against predators. On cooler mornings, they line up on flat rocks to face the sun, while young Cholla's learn quickly that one wrong step away from a crack can be fatal. Beyond their favourite stone hideouts, the ground rises higher and cooler, leading toward the north rim. Up here, the cliff edge is so high that storms can roll in below you, while the sky above stays clear. Snow can shut this side down for months, so the whole rim feels like a place that only opens by special permission. Some viewpoints look straight down into side canyons that most visitors on the other rim never even know exist. On quiet days, you can stand alone at the edge and hear nothing but wind and the faint rush of the river far below. Lightning often hits this rim first, carving scars into trees and rock that remain visible for years. And riding those same cliffs and updrafts, one giant bird returns from the edge of extinction, the California condor. Its wings are black with bright white patches that flash when it turns, like someone opening and closing flags in the sky. Remarkably, condors hardly flap. They hook into rising air and glide for hours, scanning the canyon like a slow-moving drone. As part of ongoing conservation efforts, each bird wears a big number tag on its wings, turning every sighting into a tracked event in an extended rescue mission. They often gather in small groups on high cliffs, taking turns feeding on a carcass, while just beneath those black wings, a very different reptile with a secretive bite moves in the heat, the Gila monster. Its skin looks like it is covered in tiny black and orange beads, as if built from hard candy and made dangerous with bright colours warning every predator, "Touch me, and you'll regret it." Because it spends most of its life underground, when you see it, you're catching a rare out-of-office moment. After a big meal, it can store the fat and then disappear for weeks without needing more food. Unlike most lizards, it has venom in its saliva and delivers it by chewing, so once it bites, it holds on like a locked clamp. It also loves raiding nests, swallowing eggs, and helpless young in one slow, careful feast. Even so, people walking nearby often never know it is there, because it moves low and slow, blending with rocks and shade. And as it vanishes back into cracks and burrows, the canyon opens up again toward busier viewpoints on the south rim. This side of the park holds the main village, packed with trails, museums and lookouts built right along the cliff edge. Mather Point and Desert View are not just famous names, they sit on bends of the rim where the canyon seems to split into several arms at once. From some railings, the rock layers line up like a giant layer cake, each band a different colour and age. Most river trips, mule rides, and corridor hikes start or end here, so nearly every big canyon adventure passes through it. Rescue teams are busiest on this side, because crowds, heat and steep drops all come together in one place. And when night falls and the parking lots go quiet, another resident of these cliffs steps out of the shadows, the cougar. At first glance, it looks like an oversized house cat stretched long and lean, with a plain tan coat that lets it melt into rock and dirt. Beneath its agile frame, its wide, soft paws act like built-in shock absorbers, allowing it to land from ledges without a sound, while its long tail works like a balancing pole on narrow ridges. In its hunting territory, it preys mostly on deer, waiting above game trails before dropping from cover in one fast jump. Once it catches prey, it can drag animals much heavier than itself into bushes or into shadows to feed on them over several days. Despite its size and power, cougars avoid people so well that most visitors never see one, even though the cats may watch from nearby trees or rocks. And far from these quiet hunters and their cliff trails, another story unfolds in stone homes at a different park, Cliff Palace of Mesa Verde National Park, Colorado. This palace is really a densely packed neighbourhood tucked into a cliff, with rooms, towers and round chambers all sharing a single giant rock roof. Builders carved hand and toe holds into the cliff so they could climb in and out every day, carrying water, corn and wood without ladders or ropes. Doorways are tiny and T-shaped, forcing anyone who enters to duck or twist, which may have helped with control, safety, or ceremony. Some walls still show traces of paint and plaster, proof that the place was not just for shelter, but also for careful design and meaning. And today, every loose stone, footprint and crack is watched closely, because one careless step can erase a clue to how this cliff city once worked. Yosemite National Park is a giant U-shaped valley cut into hard grey rock, with tall walls, loud waterfalls and flat meadows on the floor. Yosemite comes from a local indigenous word early newcomers used for people in the area, which later became the name of the place itself. The cliffs tell another story, as smooth faces like El Capitan were polished by ice, so climbers today scale the same rock that glaciers once scraped clean. seasonal changes transform the valley. In spring, snowmelt can turn quiet falls into roaring white curtains that shake the ground and throw spray across the area. By contrast, some waterfalls vanish in late summer, leaving only black streaks on the rock, so a wall that looked alive in May can seem dead and dry by August. On certain evenings in late winter, Horsetail Fall lines up with the setting sun and glows orange, so it looks like a thin stream of fire running off the cliff. Meadows in the valley floor are not random clearings. They were shaped for generations by indigenous burning and use, which kept trees from closing them in. Rockfalls still crash down without warning, sometimes changing climbing routes or wiping out pieces of forest in a single event. As day visitors leave the roads and picnic tables, one slim, clever predator remains active in the park: the coyote, a medium-sized wild dog with long legs, a narrow snout, yellow-brown fur, and a bushy tail. In Yosemite, they learn traffic patterns so well that they often wait for cars to stop before crossing roads. They sometimes fake a careless walk near fields or picnic spots, drawing curious ravens and ground squirrels into the open, then turn the moment into a hunt. Their howls can bounce off the rock walls so strongly that a single coyote can sound like a whole pack. In winter, they step exactly in their own tracks to save energy, leaving long, ruler straight lines of prints across the snow. Families teach pups to test new food by tasting only a little first, which helps them avoid poisoned or spoiled scraps. Above their hunting grounds and looping tracks, a huge wall of granite rises from the valley floor, the Half Dome. It looks like a giant stone bubble sliced in half, with one side rounded and the other dropping almost straight down. Because of this shape, the whole structure is one solid block of rock, not a pile of pieces, so climbers treat it like a single massive puzzle. Its history shows in the details. The smooth face was polished by ice, which is why there are so few natural handholds on the steep side. Yet despite its steepness, the top is flat enough for people to walk around and sit, even though sheer drops sit only a few steps away on several edges. Conditions can turn dangerous quickly, as lightning regularly hits the dome, making the summit a real hazard when storms roll in. Meanwhile, below this giant slab, small animals like the ground squirrel live their own busy lives among rocks and roots. They look like mini grey-brown sausages with short legs and a tail, yet they can vanish into a hole faster than most people can blink. In fact, the squirrels in this area build whole tunnel towns underground, with separate rooms for sleeping, storing food, and raising babies. From these burrows they pop up, stand tall, and whistle sharp alarms, turning every squirrel into a tiny lookout for the whole group. Because hawks, coyotes, and even cars pose real threats, almost every step they take above ground becomes a careful risk calculation. To stay prepared, they stuff seeds and nuts into stretchy cheek pouches, then unload their stash in hidden storage rooms like little basement pantries. In colder spots, some even slow their metabolism for long underground rests, waking up again when conditions outside improve. Mothers keep pups hidden until they are fast enough to dash to a burrow on their own, since one late sprint can mean the end. What ultimately sets them apart is how well they share alarms and tunnels, turning many small bodies into one innovative nervous system. And while they race between burrow mouths, water far above them is already on its way over the cliff edge, beginning its long fall as Yosemite falls. From a distance, it seems like one long white rope dropped from the rim, even though it's actually three separate waterfalls, upper, middle, and lower, stacked in a single line. During peak snowmelt, the thunder of the upper fall carries across much of the valley, echoing even when the water itself disappears behind trees. When strong winds sweep through, the water can twist sideways or lift upward, so part of the fall hangs in midair before drifting back as mist. Yet as summer dries the cliffs, the same wall can fall silent, leaving visitors staring at bare rock where a roaring torrent thundered only weeks earlier. Once winter arrives, chunks of ice crash loose and erupt at the base, slowly building frozen cones that can grow taller than nearby trees. Even in this violent setting, tiny ledges beside the falls shelter plants and small animals that cling to wet cracks and survive inches from the spray. And along the trail, hikers climb steep switchbacks so close to the drop that cool mist settles on their faces while their boots remain on warm stone. Not far beyond this towering cascade, another granite giant takes over the skyline, the sheer stone face known as El Capitan Rock. Its main wall is so tall that climbers who spend the night on it rely on hanging tents bolted directly into the stone, appearing no larger than ants from the valley floor. Because the cliff is mostly one solid block of granite, the sound of a falling rock can be heard across the valley like a loud drum beat. Over time, entire sections of the wall have broken away in massive rockfalls, instantly wiping out climbing routes that took years to establish. On rare winter days, thin lines of snow and ice collect on its ledges, turning a well-known ascent into a demanding mixed ice challenge. Beyond its base, the trail leads into a narrower canyon where the next landmark awaits, a powerful chute of water called Vernal Falls. It takes its name from vernal, meaning spring, because snowmelt swells them into a wild, roaring spectacle early in the year. Beside the cascade, the mist trail is so frequently soaked that stone steps develop slippery green coatings from constant spray. Above the drop, the emerald pool appears calm, yet even a small slip near its outlet can send someone tumbling over the edge. In winter, the flying spray freezes into a jagged ice cone at the base, built grain by grain from shattered droplets. On bright, sunny days, the curtain of water sometimes splits into thin threads, briefly revealing the bare rock spine behind it. At the bottom of the cliff, the roar softens as the water finally spreads out and joins the Merced River. Its name comes from a word meaning mercy, which is ironic since its cold current can switch from gentle to dangerous in seconds. In spring, the river swallows whole trees and chunks of bank, only to shrink back to quiet, shallow channels later in summer. Sandbars, beaches and bends shift over time, so a favourite picnic spot one year can be underwater or gone the next. The same channel that carries rafts and swimmers also carries logs, lost gear, and sometimes entire sections of bridge during big floods. Reflections on calm days can mirror cliffs so clearly that it feels like a second valley hidden in the water. Fish, insects and plants organise their entire lives around the river's changing moods, adjusting as the current speeds up or slows down. Along its banks, one animal has learned to take advantage of these human patterns and food smells: black bears. Despite their name, these bears are often brown or cinnamon, so colour alone does not reveal the species. Their sense of smell is so keen that they can detect a snack left in a locked car and even bend the door frame to reach it. Rangers can often identify individuals by their habits. Some specialise in dumpsters, others in campgrounds, and still others in orchards or oak pockets. Over time, they have learned that coolers, backpacks, and even baby strollers often signal food, so they target objects as well as scents. Cubs quickly imitate whatever their mother does, meaning one clever food raid can turn into a family tradition, carried on for years. Beyond the river and camp loops where bears roam, another giant community exists, rooted in place, the towering Sequoias of Mariposa Grove. Many of these trees were already centuries old when the word Yosemite was first spoken by newcomers, yet they continue adding wood even today. The grizzly giant's branches are so massive that each one could be a whole tree by itself in another forest. Nearby, the famous tunnel tree was carved so people and even cars could pass through its trunk, yet the tree remained alive for years after the cut. Sequoia bark can be thicker than a person is wide, providing vital protection for the living core against fire and insects. Their cones are tiny compared to their enormous size, and some only open long after the fire's heat dries and cracks them. High among these branches, one of the park's rarest birds, the great grey owl, sometimes hunts and nests in the quiet canopy. Its face is a huge grey disc with yellow eyes at its centre, resembling a radar dish built solely to detect sound and movement. With this extraordinary hearing, it can sense a mouse moving beneath the snow and drop straight through the crust to catch it without ever seeing it. Its wings are edged with special soft feathers, allowing it to fly almost silently, even when the air is still. Unlike many birds, it does not build its own nest. Instead, it takes over old hawk or crow nests, or uses broken treetops. Chicks perch like grey puffballs on high branches, learning to hop and glide long before they hunt independently. In Yosemite, only a small number of these owls inhabit a few meadows and groves, making every sighting a rare event. Meanwhile, just below their lookout perches, water gathers again at the valley walls and plunges in a single drop known as Bridal Veil Falls. Its name comes from the way the wind can spread the falling water sideways, thinning it into a long white veil in the air. The local indigenous name, Pohono, serves as a warning of dangerous winds here, and even today, sudden gusts can shove the spray directly into visitors' faces. Around its splash zone, damp meadows and shady patches provide food and cover for one of the valley's most common grazers, the mule deer. Their huge ears act like built-in radar dishes, twisting in different directions to catch tiny sounds that other animals might miss. The black tip on their tail serves as a signal flag. When it pops up, other deer know danger is near and prepare to move. Fawns are intentionally left alone, lying still with spotted coats, while their mothers feed away from them to avoid attracting predators. Mule deer switch seamlessly from nibbling grass in open fields to stripping leaves and acorns under trees, allowing a single herd to feed across several zones in one day. Their tracks and droppings function like a map, marking where water, safe beds and good food patches are long after the herd has moved on. And as they graze below cliffs and waterfalls, the valley continues to change around them, shaped by the same water, rock and time that guide their paths. Montezuma Castle looks like a 5-story apartment block tucked into a cliff, but every floor was reached only by ladders hanging off the rock. Early settlers mistakenly thought it was connected to the Aztec ruler Montezuma, even though the Sinagua people built it long before his time, and it was never a royal palace. Building on this, the people who constructed it chose a limestone wall right above a creek, high enough to dodge floods, but close enough to watch their fields below. A larger complex called Castle A once stood at the base with dozens of rooms, but it collapsed, so the cliff home we see today is just the surviving part, not the main building. Despite this loss, the builders used mud mortar and local stone so well that many walls still stand even after long years of weather and looting. Even so, no one knows the exact reason the community left. Signs point to drought and pressure, but the final push that emptied those rooms is still a guess. Joshua Tree National Park is a high desert region where 2 deserts meet, filled with twisted Joshua trees and rounded boulders. Meanwhile, it earned its name from travellers who thought its arms-up shape looked like a person pointing the way across the desert. Over time, wind and sharp temperature swings cracked the rock so thoroughly that entire hillsides fractured into climbable blocks without any quarrying. In addition, Old mines, rusted tanks, and forgotten cabins still hide inside canyons, showing how people once tried to pull gold and water from this harsh ground. At night, the sky becomes so dark that stargazers can see clear bands of the Milky Way, while coyotes and owls use the same open space as a hunting zone. During storms, sudden flash floods can tear through dry washes and then vanish, leaving fresh sand patterns and shifted boulders by morning. Throughout the park, rock climbers, photographers, and night sky fans all rely on the same formations in different ways. One for grip, one for shape, one for silhouette. In some of the hottest, driest corners, a new hardy specialist takes over the area, the Cholla cacti. Each segment is packed with water on the inside and armoured with hooked spines on the outside, like a living can full of needles. Because the spines detach so easily, even the lightest touch can leave an entire piece clinging to skin, shoes, or fur. As a result, those fallen segments can take root and grow into new plants, allowing every painful encounter to become another way for the cactus to spread. Over time, a single plant can expand into a dense cholla garden, a patch so thick with barbs that even desert animals avoid passing through it. Beyond these spiny fields, rock walls and boulder mazes guide visitors to another well-known part of the park, Hidden Valley. It is almost entirely surrounded by stone, with only a narrow gap that a rancher widened so cattle could get in. Old stories say rustlers hid stolen herds here because from the outside it looked like a solid ridge of rock. Inside, the walls block the wind and trap some moisture, so plants from different desert areas can grow together on the sandy floor. Moving along, the main loop trail is short, but it goes under cliffs that climbers use as a practice area with popular routes. In the evening, tents at the nearby campground sit just under the boulders so that climbers can get on the rocks within minutes. Sound bounces oddly off the stone walls, so shouts, laughter, and clinking gear can seem nearer or farther than they really are, giving the valley a strange, lively feel. Grand Teton National Park stretches around a sharp wall of mountains that rise straight from a flat valley, with lakes and a large river lying at their base. Interestingly, the name Teton likely comes from French trappers who noticed three main peaks and gave them a playful nickname that endured long after they left. The mountains soar so dramatically because a fault at their base continues to lift the range while the valley slowly sinks, like a tilted table being raised on one side. At the foot of the cliffs, dozens of clear lakes, from tiny potholes to long glacial basins, mirror the peaks that carved them. Yet storms can sweep over the crests in minutes, turning calm afternoons into lightning, hail and whiteout on the higher trails. At the centre of the park, the tallest and most famous ridge of rock gives both the range and the park its name, the Grand Teton Range. Historically, the name comes from French trappers who gave the three main peaks a crude nickname that lingered long after they were gone. The front of the range rises so abruptly from the valley that there are almost no foothills, just flat ground followed by sheer cliffs. Beneath this dramatic rise, a fault slowly lifts the mountains while the valley sinks, which make the whole range resemble a tipped block pulled up on one edge. In shaded bowls, small glaciers still survive, feeding ice-cold streams and lakes even in late summer. Meanwhile, climbers treat these peaks as a natural training gym for serious mountaineering, tackling routes that combine rock, snow and sudden storms. From the valley floor, the skyline appears fixed, but rockfalls, avalanches, and shifting ice reveal that the range is still constantly reshaping itself. Surrounding these sharp ridges and snowfields, grizzly bears move through forests and meadows with their own rules. Their shoulder hump is pure muscle, strong enough to flip heavy logs or dig deep pits in just minutes. In addition, their nose can detect the scent of a carcass or an elk calf from far across a valley, even when wind and trees block the view. They can shift from grazing on grass and berries to hunting young elk or scavenging wolf kills, depending on which food source is easiest to reach. Cubs spend years following their mother's roots, learning exact logs, streams and berry patches like a living map. Scars on faces and flanks often come from fights with other bears over food, rather than from encounters with people. In the fall, they eat almost non-stop, turning entire hillsides of berries and roots into fat that must sustain them through months in the den. Once the bears disappear into their dens for winter, the slopes become still, with Jackson Lake stretching below the mountains. It is actually a natural basin raised by a dam, so when water drops late in the season, old shorelines and drowned tree stumps suddenly reappear. Its water stays cold even on hot days because it is fed by snowmelt and glacial streams, so a quick swim can shock the body fast. From its outlet, the Snake River leaves the lake and heads toward lower country as it cuts its way past features like Granite Falls. At this point, the river strikes hard bedrock and transforms into a short, roaring stairway of churning water instead of a smooth channel. During high flows, entire logs and boulders are pushed through this section, gradually reshaping the falls from year to year. Nearby, the combination of cold main currents and hot springs creates a valley with both near freezing water and almost scalding pools. Along the calmer side channels, animals often travel, while people focus on the noisy main drop. Higher up in the cirques that feed these streams, snowmelt collects once more in a quieter mountain basin called Holly Lake. It rests in a rock bowl with almost no flat shore, so in many places the water begins right where the stone ends. Even in full summer down in the valley, patches of snow can linger near its edge. Reaching it requires a long climb, so only hikers willing to tackle switchbacks and thin air usually get there. Tracks in the damp ground around the inlet often reveal which creatures visit between human trips: deer, bears, and sometimes heavier prints. Among these large visitors in the park's high basins and wet meadows, one of the most impressive is the moose. Its front half is built like a bulldozer, with a massive shoulder hump and long legs that let it move through chest-high water and thick brush. The big nose is not just for show, it helps the moose grab mouthfuls of underwater plants, while its eyes and ears stay above the surface. During the mating season, bulls grow flat, wide antlers that act like moving billboards and help them appear even larger. Calves can swim soon after birth and follow their mother across cold ponds and side channels as if they were mere puddles. Over time, moose can eat so many willow shoots along a riverbank that they reshape the corridor, leaving it either thicker or more open. In winter, they often use ploughed roads and packed trails as easy paths, even though this brings them dangerously close to cars. They may seem slow and calm, but when spooked or defending a calf, moose can sprint and kick, with enough force to knock down a grown person. After feeding in ponds and willow patches, many of their paths lead back toward the main blue ribbon crossing the valley floor, the Snake River. Interestingly, the river gets its name from indigenous people who were once called the Snake Indians, not from any snakes in the water. It begins in the high country, flows through 2 major parks, and then continues for hundreds of miles before eventually reaching the ocean. In spring, snowmelt can reshape the river in a single season, cutting new side channels, moving gravel bars, and quietly erasing old banks. The water stays cold year-round, so a fall in without a life jacket can become dangerous within minutes, even on a sunny day. Moose, elk, beavers and otters all share the same bends and islands as they move through different depths and banks, much like lanes on a highway. In those calm backwaters and bends, bright white shapes drift on the surface, belonging to the trumpeter swans. They are the largest native swans on the continent, yet they feed mostly by quietly tipping forward and reaching underwater plants. Cygnets start out grey and only turn white as they grow, so that a single family can look like 2 different species travelling together. When they open their wings to take off, they need a long water runway, slapping their feet on the surface before finally lifting clear of the river. Canyonlands National Park forms a vast maze of canyons, mesas, arches and buttes carved by 2 major rivers through countless layers of red rock. As a result, the park is divided into 4 distinct areas: Island in the Sky, the Needles, the Maze and Horseshoe Canyon, each feeling like a separate world with its own shapes and pathways. The Needles district is packed with tall, thin rock towers lined up in rows, with tight passages between them that feel like walking through stone hallways. Maze is so remote and confusing that even experienced drivers and hikers treat it like a test. One wrong turn can mean hours of backtracking on rough tracks and benches. Down below, the Colorado and Green Rivers carve toward their meeting point, forming loops, sheer walls, and goosenecks far below the mesa rims. Horseshoe Canyon sits apart from the main park but holds famous rock art panels, showing that people walked and painted here long before any roads or maps. In all these districts, tiny ledges and impossible slopes still grow enough scrub and grass to feed one sure-footed local expert, the desert bighorn sheep. Their hooves have a hard outer rim and a soft, rubbery centre, so they can grip narrow rock edges like built-in climbing shoes. Because of this, they often stand on slopes that appear vertical from below, calmly chewing, while gravity does the worrying for everyone watching. Meanwhile, rams grow heavy, curled horns that can weigh as much as a small backpack on each side of their head. During clashes, two rams slam those horns together with such force that the crack can echo across an entire canyon. Soon after birth, ewes lead lambs onto steep escape cliffs, pushing them to learn no-slip footing almost as soon as they can walk. They drink from tiny potholes and seeps that other big animals never reach, and this converts small rock puddles into lifelines. In addition, their tan coats match so well with the sandstone that a whole herd can stand still on a wall and appear to be part of the rock itself. And when danger comes, predators may be fast on flat ground, but once the sheep step onto their broken stairway of ledges, the chase usually ends. Mount Rainier National Park centres on a sleeping volcano that still releases tiny puffs of gas from its summit. Meanwhile, the ice covering it moves like a slow river, cracking and shifting every day, even though many visitors assume glaciers stay still. Farther downslope, some of the rocks scattered near its base were blasted there by ancient eruptions strong enough to uproot entire forests in moments. Beneath the surface, volcanic heat melts thick ice into hidden tunnels where warm water flows quietly under frozen ground. At certain spots, this same heat boils mud and forms small bubbling pools that carry a faint scent of metal and smoke. During sudden fog, people have disappeared after stepping only a short distance from the trail, and search teams have reported hearing heavy footsteps without seeing anyone. On the steep cliffs where few hikers ever venture, mountain goats find the rough, high-perched homes they prefer. Their hooves act like built-in grips, splitting slightly in the middle so they can lock onto rock edges thinner than a finger. As a result, they can climb straight up walls of ice that would send most animals sliding down in seconds. Even more astonishing, newborns can follow their mothers up cliffs within a single day of being born. When natural salt is scarce on the rocks, the goats sometimes lick the sweat-soaked handles of trekking poles left behind by hikers. Their thick winter coat doesn't just block cold, it grows so dense that snow can gather on top without melting. To cool off, they often roll in the snow, shaking off clouds of white like drifting dust. Instead of relying on streams, they almost never drink water directly, drawing nearly all they need from the plants they eat. Above them, the tapping from a tall tree may echo across the cliffs, which reveals the steady work of the pileated woodpecker. From there, this bird shows off its dramatic colours: a black body, white stripes along its neck, and a vivid red crest. Its tongue is so long that it wraps around its skull when not in use, and this design helps it hammer into solid wood all day without getting a headache because the skull absorbs each blow. When searching for insects, it becomes selective and listens for hollow tones inside a trunk before pecking. As a result, the holes it carves are so large that owls, bats, and squirrels later move in and use them as ready-made homes. Rocky Mountain National Park is a high mountain maze of sharp peaks, thin air, and sudden storms that can turn a calm day into danger within minutes. Some valleys still hold traces of old mining towns, with broken tools and fallen cabins slowly sinking into the ground. Lightning strikes frequently, leaving trees burned and twisted, while nearby forests remain untouched. Roads like Trail Ridge Road climb from forest to bare rock and snow in a short drive, but can become too risky in bad weather. Elk, black bears, and mountain lions share these paths, yet most people never see them because the animals move at dawn, in fog, or at night. Scientists study the park's high lakes and snowfields to track environmental changes across the planet. In the cold, wind-blasted zones above the trees, the white-tailed ptarmigan has adapted to survive all winter long. Throughout the seasons, it changes from mottled brown in summer to pure white in snow, which lets predators walk right past without noticing it. Its feet grow thick feathers that act like soft boots so it can move across powder snow without sinking far. When storms arrive, it burrows into the snow and rests inside a small tunnel, and it employs the snow itself as a protective wall. It eats buds, twigs, and plants buried under ice, scraping them out even when almost nothing else is around. Sometimes whole groups remain motionless for long stretches, leaving only a ring of tiny tracks and droppings as evidence of their presence. Yet even in these high, remote areas, one quiet hunter can still locate it: the stealthy Canada lynx. To move efficiently, its wide, furry paws let it glide over soft snow, while heavier animals sink and slow down. The black tufts on its ears act like tiny signal boosters, which help it detect faint sounds from hairs shifting under branches or snow. For quick maneuvers, its short tail provides balance, allowing the cat to twist sharply during sudden turns in a chase. When searching for prey, it often follows the same maze of snowshoe hair tracks again and again, and those trails become a dependable hunting route. During lean times, it survives long stretches with little food by conserving energy, moving slowly, and resting often instead of roaming non-stop. Yellowstone National Park sits right on top of a giant volcano, so the ground is alive with heat, gas, and constant tiny quakes, even on calm days. Some pools are so acidic and hot that fallen tree branches, and even animal, remains slowly break down in the water instead of rotting in the usual way. The colours around many hot springs come from heat-loving microbes that survive where most life would die, which tint the ground in bands of orange, yellow, and green. In other places, the ground is thin like a crust. Step off the boardwalk, and you risk breaking through into scalding mud or boiling water below. Over longer spans of time, the whole park seems to breathe, with parts of the surface gradually rising and sinking as magma and hot water shift underneath. And while walking across its open valleys today, you may suddenly spot one of its most iconic residents grazing, the bison. These animals show a massive front hump of muscle, a shaggy dark head and shoulders, slimmer hips, and a short tail with a tuft at the end. In winter, they swing their huge heads side to side to clear snow and reach grass, functioning almost like a built-in snowplow. Their fur is so dense that snow can rest on its back without melting for a while, revealing how effectively it holds warmth. During mating season, males roar, paw at the ground and clash with one another, and the sound can roll across entire valleys. Calves arrive with lighter coats and stay close to their mothers in the centre of the herd, so they depend on the surrounding adults as a shifting wall of protection. In cold weather, bison frequently rest near warm ground and thermal areas, and they use the slight extra heat rising from the earth to conserve energy. Near the herds, the Yellowstone River continues its course, which connects the grasslands, forests, and geothermal terrain they move through each season. It remains the only major river in the region that still runs its entire length without a single dam, so its flow stays wild from source to exit. As it enters the Grand Canyon, the river has carved bright yellow and orange walls, tinted by hot water and minerals leaking from the ground. At lower falls, the drop sends water plunging more than twice the height of Niagara Falls. Yet the canyon is so narrow that the sound and spray seem trapped inside. During some winters, ice jams form strange frozen barriers, and when they burst, sudden surges can tear out banks and reshape the channel in a single moment. In quieter bends, the river's curves and side channels produce pockets of fog and shifting light that have inspired tales of figures on the banks disappearing when approached. Following that same flow upstream leads to a completely different kind of water, the boiling, rainbow-coloured pool of Grand Prismatic Spring. The vivid rings around it come from heat-tolerant microbes that survive only within narrow temperature zones, so each colour marks a distinct band of life that shuts down if conditions shift. At the centre, however, the water is so hot that almost nothing can endure it, and the middle stays clear and blue, while the cooler margins glow in orange, yellow and green. In addition, gas is constantly rising from the pool, and changes in that escaping vapour help scientists monitor activity within the enormous volcano beneath Yellowstone. Human disturbance also affects the spring, as coins, trash or other objects dropped into it can sink, corrode or clog small vents, and they change the patterns of water and colour over time. Beyond the pool itself, the runoff channels carry hot, mineral-rich water outward, tinting the ground with unusual hues and forming delicate crusts that can collapse under a single step. Because of its huge size and heat, the spring acts less like a calm pond and more like an open wound in the earth, as it constantly lets out energy from the volcano below. A short distance away, that same restless heat drives another major feature in the basin, the Excelsior Geyser. Historically, it once erupted so violently that it may have damaged its own inner plumbing, and it became a huge boiling pool instead of a blasting geyser. Even without towering eruptions, it pours out so much hot water that it can noticeably warm the river it drains into. The same flow that bubbles out of Excelsior Geyser is carried downstream until it helps feed the plunge of Gibbon Falls. At this point, the water spreads over a rock ledge and then falls into a narrow gorge below, which changes the river into white foam and produces a loud roar. Below the drop, the water is cold and full of air, which creates a challenging zone for any trout attempting to swim upstream. Visitors often view the falls from an easy roadside stop, yet a single misstep off the path can place them above steep, loose slopes that slide straight toward fast water. Continuing along that same river system, the flow eventually slows and spreads out into one of Yellowstone's most iconic wildlife areas, Lamar Valley. This is often called the Serengeti of America because huge herds of bison, elk and pronghorn share the same open ground with predators such as bears and foxes. Winter does not empty the valley. It turns it into a test zone where only the toughest survivors stay, and wolves use the snow to slow weak prey. Among all the animals moving through Valley, the grey wolf is the one most sought after by onlookers. These animals can trot for hours across the area without tiring, with long legs and large paws that help them traverse snow and soft ground with ease. Each pack maintains its own home range, with some patrolling the same ridges and river crossings so consistently that observers can predict their movements. When hunting elk, they often begin with quiet tests of the herd, carrying out short rushes to identify the weakest target before the full pack closes in. Their howls travel across the valley, allowing packs on different hillsides to communicate, and listeners can sometimes tell the pack's size and mood from the sound alone. Pups born in dens along the valley floor are first fed by adults who share food with them by bringing it back to the den. As they grow, they follow adults on hunts, and they memorize the exact river bends, side gullies and hills that elk use as escape routes. Beyond their chase, a very different kind of power emerges at Mammoth Hot Springs, where water quietly reshapes rock into flowing white and orange terraces. Rising through buried limestone, the hot water carries minerals that settle on the surface, gradually creating new steps visible within a human lifetime. Even slight shifts in flow can dry up a bright terrace within months, while a nearby plain shelf suddenly becomes active with colour and heat. The softness of the white rock means boardwalks and railings often require relocation or rebuilding as new deposits accumulate. Bands of vivid colour come from living microbes, which turn to chalky white when water temperatures rise or fall. During winter, elk frequently gather on the warm ground and around steaming terraces, and they rely on the heated soil as natural shelter. At times they lie so close to the hot earth that snow melts around their bodies in clean outlines, while the rest of the hillside remains white. They often walk calmly past buildings and parked cars, yet a sudden bugle or head toss can turn that quiet moment into a dangerous zone if people stand too near. During the rut, bulls have even been seen locking antlers just yards from sidewalks, treating roads, lawns and hot spring edges as part of their fighting arena. Meanwhile, cows may drop their calves in small patches of brush beside paths or structures, meaning a place that seems empty can suddenly hold a newborn and a very defensive mother. In heavy snow years, the herd may choose the risky comfort of warm, crowded terraces over colder, safer hillsides, trading distance from predators for closer contact with humans. Canyon de Chelly National Monument is one of the few protected places where people still live and farm on the canyon floor, right beside old cliff homes and rock art. Because the land inside the monument belongs to the Navajo Nation, visitors need a local guide to explore the canyon floor beyond a few open areas. In places like the White House and Mummy Cave, the ruins include homes on the canyon floor and in high alcoves, so one cliff can show layers of families from different times. At the junction of these canyons, Spider Rock rises as a tall stone tower and stands at the centre of some of the region's strongest and most enduring stories. Its shape is closely linked to Navajo legends, especially tales of Spider Woman and her power. The sandstone spire has dark lower walls and a lighter top, shaped as softer rock eroded away and left a hard core standing alone on the canyon floor. From the cliffs above, golden eagles launch into long dives and use the tower as both a nest site and a natural launch point. Their bodies are dark brown with a golden wash on the back of the head and neck, and broad wings allow them to ride the air with minimal flapping. Tiny movements of their wingtips steer them high above the canyon as they watch for rabbits or young animals that move even slightly out of cover. Their grip is so powerful that once it locks onto prey, it can carry animals that seem almost too large to lift. Pairs may reuse the same cliff nest for years, and they place new sticks on it until the nest forms a heavy platform clinging to the rock face. Young ones practice jumping from ledge to ledge before attempting longer flights over open space, and missteps can send them plummeting toward the canyon floor. Death Valley National Park is the hottest, driest and lowest national park in the US, but it still has flowing springs, rare fish, and animals that are mostly active at night to survive. From the depths of Badwater Basin, the land rises sharply to towering peaks, revealing a full vertical slice of the planet within a short distance. On the salt flats at Badwater, the ground becomes so dry and crystalline that sharp crystals can cut boots and paws for anyone venturing off the worn paths. Further north, at Racetrack Playa, heavy rocks move across the flat mud and leave long tracks, a mystery that lasted for decades until scientists saw thin ice, water, and wind push them. Meanwhile, tiny pupfish cling to life in a few hot, salty pools, surviving conditions that would kill most other fish, and acting as remnants of larger lakes that once filled parts of the valley. After distant storms, flash floods can rush through dry canyons, move boulders, and wipe out roads in minutes, even where the ground once seemed safe. Elsewhere in the park, hills of eroded clay and sediment twist into sharp ridges and gullies, and create areas that locals call the Badlands. The ground looks solid, but can crumble like a sandcastle, which creates the feeling of walking on a giant clay pot ready to crack. Sudden rivers of mud appear during rain and vanish just as quickly, so new patterns emerge that were not there the day before. Sunlight shifts the colours of the hills throughout the day, which turns morning gold to dull grey by noon. At night, some visitors report hearing a low humming, even when no wind blows and no animals are nearby. Scientists debate whether strange moving lights seen across the gullies are illusions caused by heat or something more mysterious. Paths that vanish overnight keep people guessing, just like the puzzle of the moving rocks that follows. In this area, heavy stones slowly slide across flat, dry ground on their own, leaving long tracks behind as if dragged in the night. Some rocks shift direction mid-journey, curving and weaving as though racing one another. The surface looks solid, but thin layers of ice and wind may act as hidden forces guiding their slow motion. Locals claim the stones move only when the valley wills it, never when someone is watching. Even scientists acknowledge that this is one of the few places where rocks seem more alive than still. Beyond this strange terrain, an even more mysterious location awaits: the Badwater Basin. The ground here is so salty that not even insects can crawl across it for long without getting trapped. When rain falls, the surface becomes a giant mirror, which reflects the sky so perfectly that it's hard to tell what's real. The salt naturally forms sharp hexagons, as if someone carved them with careful precision. Beneath this crust lies mud so sticky it can swallow objects whole, only to release them years later, unchanged. Locals report that the ground can pop at night, as though something beneath the salt is trying to breathe. Even scientists acknowledge that the basin behaves like a living surface, constantly cracking, healing, and reshaping itself without human interference. Arches National Park is full of stone formations that bend and twist as if defying gravity. The ground beneath floats on shifting salt layers, slowly moving like clay on a pottery wheel. Many rock openings began as tiny cracks that widened over time until light could pass through. Visitors witness rocks crumbling slowly, while distant crashes may signal arches collapsing forever. Footprints in dry patches can survive for decades, outlasting some of the formations themselves. The air bends light around the redstone, which makes some rock openings appear to float when heat rises. Scientists note that new ones continue to form today, one small crack at a time. Among all the formations, Delicate Arch stands apart, shaped like a perfect bridge, poised in the desert sky. It wasn't carved by tools, but by tiny bits of sand and water, slowly eroding the solid rock, until only this thin loop remained. Beneath it, the stone is worn smooth like a giant bowl, which indicates where parts of the formation have already fallen away. During storms, lightning sometimes strikes nearby ledges, briefly lighting the arch like a flashbulb in the desert. On hot days, rising air bends light around the arch, which causes it to appear to float just above the ground. In winter, water seeps into hairline cracks, freezes, and pushes the rock apart slightly, and it transforms the arch into a slow-moving time bomb. Hikers report that when the wind blows just right, sound passing through the opening forms a low whistle that stops the moment they walk under it. Not far away, Double Arch resembles two doorways carved side by side, as if nature tried to build a pair and paused halfway. Both curves grew from the same base, but took different directions and joined again in mid-air, like two bridges shaking hands. The hollow below turns whispers and passing winds into sounds and hums that locals call the breathing stone. During heavy rain, water rushes off the top and drains straight into the ground, and it leaves no puddle behind. Pieces break away quietly over time, yet the arches still lean on each other, holding a balance no builder could copy. The space beneath traps heat so well that even cool nights feel warm inside. Crater Lake National Park is home to the deepest lake in the United States, formed when the top of a giant volcano collapsed and filled with rain and snow. With no rivers flowing in or out, it acts like a giant bathtub sealed at the bottom, replenished only by precipitation. Its water is so clear that scientists study it as a model for clean lakes, though some slowly leaks underground remain a mystery. Along the rim, cold rocks and quiet ledges shelter tiny, resilient animals that seem out of place in such a harsh environment. One example is the quick, squeaky American pika. During summer, this little creature cuts and dries plants into neat hay piles, much like a miniature farmer stocking a pantry under the rocks. It rarely leaves its rocky maze, so rather than migrating for winter, it builds towering stacks of food that fill multiple cracks and tunnels. Each one claims its own storage zone and will chase off intruders with loud squeaks, even if the competitor is nearly the same size. Extremely sensitive to heat, it must dash quickly for food, because prolonged exposure to the sun can be fatal. Just below these vigilant foragers, the lake hides another remarkable feature, a steep, dark rock island known as Wizard Island. This island is actually a mini volcano that rose from the bottom of the lake after the larger volcano collapsed. At its top sits a crater, like a punch bowl, where lava once bubbled before the water level climbed around it. While most visitors notice only this single cone, other volcanic bumps remain hidden underwater nearby, never breaking the surface. The rock cooled so rapidly that some sections appear twisted and frozen, as if the lava was caught mid-splash. On calm days, the island's shadow sinks straight down into the blue water, giving the impression that the volcano extends far below what can be seen. High above the lava rock, the spotted owl claims the nearby cliffs and forests as its hunting zone. Its eyes are so sensitive to low light that it can spot a mouse on the forest floor while perched silently on a high branch. Its specialised feathers muffle sound, which allows it to glide over prey without a single flap being heard. The owl favours older trees with broken tops and large branches, using storm-damaged wood as ideal lookout posts. At night, it trades silent flight for sharp calls, and it marks which parts of the forest belong to different owls. Around Crater Lake, it rarely leaves its home range and works more as a guardian of one forest patch than a traveller of many. Sequoia National Park is a high mountain park where one area can hold rushing rivers, marble caves, and wide tree trunks. It was created mainly to stop logging of its biggest trees, so entire groves of giants were saved, while forests beyond its borders were cut. Across the area, the ground rises from low, hot foothills to sharp peaks, so visitors can drive from oak scrub to bare rock and snow without leaving the area. Beneath the forests, water carved long cave systems through marble, forming a second park underground with stalactites, stalagmites, and cold streams. In the past, roads once ran straight through fallen sequoia trunks, though parts of those drive-through trees later closed after heavy traffic damaged the wood. As the seasons change, some trails vanish under winter snow, while black bears sleep nearby, yet those same routes fill with climbers heading to high passes and remote lakes in summer. At the centre of it all stand the true stars people come to see, the giant sequoias. These trees are so tough that fire actually helps them by cracking their cones and dropping fresh seeds onto clean ground. Their bark acts like a thick shield, so even when flames climb their sides, the living core inside often remains safe. High above, their crowns catch and store moisture from air and snow, so each tree works like a giant sponge that slows how quickly the forest dries out. When one finally falls, a giant sequoia becomes a long apartment block where insects, small animals, and new seedlings move in. Even their fallen branches can match the size of ordinary trees, so a single storm may drop enough wood to resemble a small village of logs. These conditions create perfect hangout spots for loud, bold birds that favour tall trees and busy forests, such as the Steller's jay. Acting like forest alarms, harsh calls ring out whenever a predator or curious hiker appears. They hide food everywhere, under leaves, in bark cracks, in moss, and many of these stashes are remembered long afterward. Forgetting some caches has a surprising benefit. Future trees sprout, and it transforms a simple snack habit into free work for the forest. Mimicking nearby sounds, a single jay can switch from normal calls to fake hawk screams, or even metallic clicks within a minute. When groups follow visitors, it can feel as if the birds are running the campsite, inspecting bags, tables, and grills for an easy meal. Amid the chaos, their comfort with noise and crowds forms a sharp contrast to the still stone and wide open views that await at Mora Rock. It rises as a single chunk of granite, pushed up and left bare, like a giant knuckle jutting out of the forest. Long ago there were no steps, so anyone seeking the summit had to crawl over loose rock and squeeze through tight cracks, facing real risk of falling. Today, a steep staircase is carved directly into the stone to let hikers feel the rock beneath every step, while cliffs drop away beside them. On clear days, people say they can watch distant storms forming, while the rock under their feet remains dry and calm. Some visitors quietly mention a strange unease up there, like the sense that leaning just 1 inch too far could make the rock let you go. Glacier National Park is a high mountain park where sharp peaks, cold lakes and hanging snowfields cluster together like pieces of a puzzle. Shaped by ice, almost every smooth cliff and bowl visible today tells the story of glaciers that scraped and carved the valleys. From its heights, 3 major river systems begin, so a single storm can send rain that eventually reaches 3 different oceans. Some lakes are so clear and still that boats seem to float in mid-air, with every rock and log visible on the bottom. Trails often cross cliffs, snow patches, and bear country in a single day, turning a casual walk into a serious adventure if weather or wildlife intervenes. At night, hikers report silent shapes on high passes and strange lights over ridges, feeding stories of missing travellers and roads that seem to shift in fog. All that meltwater eventually funnels into the twisting blue channels of the Flathead River. It splits into forks that wrap around the edges, so hiking or driving the boundary often means shadowing its current without realising it. The water is so clear that rocks on the bottom are easy to count, yet the current beneath is strong enough to sweep a flipped raft downstream in seconds. Bends lined with coloured stones transform into moving carpets of reds, greens and purples whenever the sun hits just right, adding bursts of colour to the ride. Rafters glide through calm pools before plunging into fast, cold rapids, where one wrong stroke can flip the entire boat. As the river leaves its tight canyons, it widens and slows, pouring that same clear, cold water into Lake McDonald, one of Glacier's most famous basins. It is so clear that on calm days, boats appear to float over nothing, while the bottom reveals every coloured stone, log and sudden drop. Those rainbow pebbles, reds, greens, blues and purples, are old mud and sand turned to rock, then scraped smooth and left on display by ice. The shore drops off quickly, so just a few steps from the edge can take you from ankle-high water to a zone where the bottom seems to vanish entirely. Locals tell stories of boats, gear, and even cars that sank in storms, and now rest on ledges far below, where light barely reaches. The same ice that carved this long, cold basin still clings higher up the range, where one of the Grinnell Glacier hang on. At its base, the turquoise lake shines brilliantly as fine sediment in the meltwater scatters blue light, which creates an almost unreal colour. Called the Salamander Glacier, the ice apron is named for its snake-like shape and the red bacteria that colour the ice. Experts warn that Grinnell Glacier and other ice formations in the park may disappear if carbon emissions keep rising. Meltwater from high above rushes through the valley and drops in tiers to form the stunning cascades of Grinnell Falls. During peak summer runoff, the falls roar so loudly that hikers must raise their voices to be heard, and the spray drenches anyone nearby. As it falls, the spray nourishes tiny moss gardens and hardy plants that cling to the wet cliff, turning bare stone into a thin, living strip. All that rushing water continues downhill until it finally spills into the long blue basins of St. Mary Lake. Framed by towering peaks, the lake's turquoise surface mirrors the mountains, with a small island at its centre, completing the picture-perfect scene. The lake has even appeared on the big screen. The opening scene of The Shining was filmed here, featuring the dramatic peaks that later inspired the mountain in the Universal Pictures logo. The Great Smoky Mountains are the most visited national park in the US, yet just a few steps off the road can land you in steep, confusing hillsides where people still get lost. Mist rising over the ridges is not fire, but plant-made haze. Trees and other plants release tiny particles that make the air look blue and foggy, even on clear days. Old farms, graveyards and stone walls lie within the park, so a short hike can suddenly drop you into someone's former backyard amid thick forest. The Smokies are called the salamander capital of the world, hosting the most salamander species in the world, many breathing through their skin and hiding under a single rotten log. Trails often start as smooth walks, but can switch into route tangles, creek crossings, and clouded over ridges where visibility drops to just a few feet. Thick forest clearings and sunny edges turns into prime singing perches for the indigo bunting. Male's feathers are actually dark, but tiny structures in them bend light so he flashes bright blue in the sun and nearly black in the shade. They migrate at night using the stars as a map, so their entire journey depends on a clear enough sky to guide them. Each year, males often return to nearly the same singing perch and use a skinny branch over a field edge as their personal stage. Females, by contrast, stay brown and hidden, and they move into low shrubs to build nests that most hikers will never notice. During the day, they feed on seeds and insects along paths, fence lines and meadows, then fall quiet at dusk as the focus of the Smokies shifts to darker valleys like Cades Cove. It looks like open farm country, but steep forested ridges ring it, so animals move in and out like traffic on a secret wildlife highway. Black bears, deer, coyotes and wild turkey all use the old fields as feeding grounds, sometimes passing right by churches, cabins and graveyards left from the old community. The loop road allows cars to crawl in a circle, while only a short walk away, you can stand alone by empty cabins and hear nothing but wind and animal sounds. At night, people report odd sights in old churches and cabins, faces in windows, footsteps on empty floors, which adds a ghost town feel to the quiet valley. Higher up, an abandoned cluster of cabins and streets, now known as Elkmont Ghost Town, waits hidden in the trees. It began as a noisy logging camp and later became a private resort, where wealthy families built summer houses right above the tracks. When the park took over and leases expired, people walked away, leaving beds, wallpaper, porches, and even toys to slowly rot in place. Some cabins have been restored while others collapsed, so a single path can lead past a freshly painted porch and, a few steps later, a house with its roof caved in. Visitors report hearing doors creak, floorboards pop, and faint music or voices in empty buildings, even when no one else is nearby. At night, the yards and porches belong to black bears once again, as they wander through the ghost town, sniffing at old steps and fallen boards. They can smell food from so far away that coolers in a closed car still act like a dinner bell. These bears can switch from eating berries and acorns to ripping apart logs for grubs or raiding wasp nests for larvae in the same evening. A mother may send her cubs up a tree with a single huff, then quietly circle below to check for danger while they cling to the bark. In some parts of the park, people wake up to find muddy paw prints on cars and porch rails, proof that a bear inspected every inch while they slept. These are the national parks of the United States, a land of hidden wonders and remarkable architectural marvels. Now, if you don't want to miss the most unreal wonders of India, check out this video.